Have you ever sat in that heavy silence at a family dinner? We retell those moments honest every day, sometimes controversial. Every story is a mirror. Subscribe, join the conversation, and maybe find a little healing. Bass leaked through the thin walls, a steady thump that muddied the afternoon heat. Red cups flashed in the sun, balloons knocked against the lemon tree by the fence. A woman's laugh cut through the music, bright and sharp. She's finally out. Freedom. The doorbell camera watched the world with its flat fisheye. In the warped frame, a hand came into view. It found the brass knob, turned it slower, until the latch lifted with a soft click. Morning. The house smelled like burned coffee and bleach. Evelyn Russo pressed her palm to the cool tile before pushing herself upright. Her cheek still held the shock of Mark's shove. The back of her head throbbed where it had met the wall. The sound had been small, like a spoon dropped in a sink, but it kept ringing in her skull. Grandma Sophie's voice floated from the hall, thin and unsure. Kelsey stepped between them before the girl could reach her. "Go to your room, honey." She kept her smile for the child, then turned a flat face toward Evelyn. "You startled her." Evelyn touched behind her ear. When she looked at her fingers, there was a rusty smear. The kitchen lights hummed. The air conditioner kicked on with a low cough. Mark didn't meet her eyes. He flipped through something on his phone and said too casual, "Let's not make this complicated. Sign the papers and be done." Evelyn looked past him to the backyard. The lemon tree carried tiny green fruit, hard as marbles. Beyond it, the cheap grill gleamed. She thought of Danny's hands lifting the grill they had bought years ago, laughing as smoke caught his eyelashes. That grill was gone. Most things were. "Not now," she said. Mark's jaw pulsed. "Everything is harder with you." She picked up the dented coffee pot and dumped it into the sink. The stink of burnt grounds rose up like something scorched and old. She moved carefully as if the floor might tilt without warning. In the living room, the new sofa Kelsey had ordered online looked like it came in a kit. It sat where Evelyn's deep chair used to catch the morning light. That chair was shoved to a corner now. It had a throw pillow that said "Live, Laugh, Love" in cursive. "Don't fuss," Kelsey said. She opened the pantry and began rearranging cans. "We already took care of the paperwork on the roof. It was leaking." "You should be grateful." "That isn't true," Evelyn said. Her voice surprised her with its steadiness. "You took care of yourselves." Kelsey made a little sound that was almost a laugh. "You see how she talks to me, Mark?" He didn't answer. He stood and walked out to the patio, the screen door snapping behind him. The master bedroom smelled like vanilla and store-bought perfume. Sun lay heavy on the new curtains. The photographs were gone from the dresser. In their place sat Kelsey's bottles, a glass dish of rings. The bedspread was stiff, something glossy with a floral pattern that looked printed on. Evelyn didn't touch it. She went past the doorway and down the narrow hall past the bathroom where the tap dripped a steady metronome to the small room at the back. The water heater hummed through the wall like a sleeping animal. Her twin bed shared the space with 2 boxes of fabric and a plastic set of drawers. There was no closet. She had folded her blouses so neatly they looked like pages. She sat at the small table that held her singer. Her fingers found the nick near the stitch-length dial. Danny had put that mark there the day they moved the machine from the garage to the bedroom. He had said, "This thing is heavier than sin," and then he had laughed. She could still see the fine white dust he left on the table when he ran his hands along the wood frame to check for splinters. She set her palm on the machine's cool metal and felt something align inside her like a bobbin seated true. Her file folder had lived in the bottom drawer for 20 years. The sound of that drawer opening had always been the same. Today it rasped. Papers had been shifted. The deed was not where it should be. Her driver's license was not in the small envelope tucked between tax receipts. She lifted sheets one by one. The drawer seemed to narrow as she reached deeper. She found an old photocopy of the deed, the ink faded to a tired gray. Her chest loosened a fraction. From down the hall, Kelsey called out, light and airy, "You should let me clear that room. It's unhealthy to hoard. And those old photos, we can digitize them. No one keeps paper anymore." Evelyn slid the faded copy into a cloth tote. She added a sweatshirt, her blood pressure pills, a trail of folded underwear, 3 pairs of socks. She put the singer's small oil bottle into the tote, then took it back out, then put it in again. She did not know where she would sew. She only knew she could not leave the machine. In the kitchen, Kelsey stood at the counter with a mason jar of iced tea. "We need more space for Sophie's things. My sister might come by today." "We talked about a play date." "I don't think today is good," Evelyn said. Kelsey took a long drink. You aren't the only person who lives here. Evelyn looked at the refrigerator. The magnets held up drawings that Sophie had made. A house with a triangle roof, a stick figure with gray hair, a lemon with a face. She reached out and straightened the paper by its corner. She could feel Kelsey watching her. On the way out, she paused in the entry. The key ring hung on a little iron hook shaped like a house. Danny had screwed that hook into the wall himself. Her fingers closed around the keys. They were heavier than she remembered. The front door opened with a dry sound. Heat rushed in. Outside, the light lay white on the pavement. A neighbor's sprinkler clicked, swung, clicked again, throwing silver arcs across a patch of grass. Nora Larkin stood in her yard with a coil of garden hose, her gray hair pinned up with a single clip. She saw the tote. She saw the blood behind Evelyn's ear. Her mouth closed. She came to the sidewalk and said, "Come inside." Evelyn hesitated. The lemon tree leaves flicked in a small breeze. A monarch butterfly wobbled above the fence line and was gone. She stepped forward. Nora opened her gate. Inside the cool of Nora's kitchen, ice cracked in a glass. Nora pressed a bag of frozen peas to the back of Evelyn's head. It felt like relief and ache at once. The clock ticked. The air conditioner blew a ribbon of cool that lifted the edge of a checked curtain. Nora set tea in front of her, sweet and pale. She did not ask questions. She set a white towel on the table just in case. "I have to go back for my machine," Evelyn said. Nora looked at her for a long second. "You will," she said. "Sit a minute." Evelyn sat. The house was so quiet she could hear the bird against the window screen peck once, twice, then give up. She held the sweating glass and let the cold ring into her palm. When the worst of the shaking eased, Nora took the peas and checked the cut. "Small," she said. "Ugly, but small." Evelyn nodded. She stared at the magnets on Nora's refrigerator. Photographs of grandchildren at a lake, a dog with a red bandana, a coupon for a locksmith. A shiny brass key on the flyer looked like it could fit her door. She swallowed and tasted copper again. She pulled the tote closer and looked inside. Her fingers found the faded gray copy of the deed. She slid it into a side pocket. The cloth rasped. She felt the weight of the keys in her jacket. She became aware of small things all at once. The way the kitchen chair creaked when she leaned. The faint lemon cleaner in the sink. Heat gathering on the windowsill above the herb pots. Outside, a bass line rose and fell. A cheer went up from somewhere. She could hear Mark's laugh through her own walls if she tried. She did not try. Nora's phone buzzed against the table. She glanced at the screen, then at Evelyn. She flipped the phone over. It buzzed again, then again, impatient. "You want me to get that," Evelyn said. "It's probably spam," Nora said. The phone buzzed, then went quiet. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. Evelyn thought of the machine's steady needle, the way it ate fabric and made it whole. She thought of Danny's hands thick with cement dust, opening and closing around nothing in the sun. She thought of Sophie's face in the hall, eyes wide mouth, a thin line. Nora rose and set a small bowl of saltines on the table. "Eat a little. Sugar helps with the shaking." Evelyn took one cracker and broke it in half. It tasted like cardboard and childhood. She let it soften on her tongue until she could swallow. The phone on the table jumped. A new notification pulsed on the glass. The screen lit up with a bank logo and a green check mark. The text was plain. Loan disbursement of $5,000 USD completed. She did not feel the chair under her for a second. The room tilted, then straightened. The bass thumped through the wall, steady as a heart. Nora reached for the phone and turned it so Evelyn could see it again. The line of text did not change. The green check mark stayed green. Evelyn set her fingertips flat on the table, one by one, as if testing the edge of fabric before a cut. The iced tea of the big tea glass left a wet ring on the wood. She looked at her hand. It was steady now. She breathed. Then she read the message again. Nora slid the phone toward her. Evelyn read the message until the words lost shape. She pressed her thumb to the edge of the glass to stop it from vibrating. "Call them," Nora said. Evelyn tapped the number for the bank and put the call on speaker. A woman on the other end said her name in a bright voice and asked for verification. Evelyn gave what she could give. She spelled her last name twice. She read the last 4 digits. She listened to a small rain of keyboard clicks. "I see the loan," the woman said. $5,000. Home improvement listed under an existing account. The forms show a matching signature. "I did not sign anything," Evelyn said. "I would like the forms." They were submitted electronically from a device already recognized on the account, the woman said. Do you have another authorized user in the household, a son or spouse perhaps? My husband is dead, Evelyn said. My son does not have permission to sign my name. I am sorry you are having this experience, the woman said. We can open a fraud claim. It can take time to investigate. I can send a temporary freeze on new activity today. Nora sat very still. Evelyn looked at the bowl of saltines. The crumbs were too bright in the afternoon light. Send the freeze, Evelyn said. After she hung up, the kitchen found its small sounds again. The clock tick, the air a low, cold ribbon, the drip in Nora's sink. Evelyn wiped the wet ring the glass had left on the table. She folded the towel corner over it as if tucking a child in. The next day passed in the quiet way pain sometimes passes, slow and bright at the edges. Nora went out to water the tomatoes and came back smelling like wet dirt. They ate toast and eggs. A sparrow pecked at the window screen and flew off. Evelyn watched light move across the floor like a clock without hands. In the afternoon, she opened the Ring app on her phone. She had forgotten her password. Her fingers remembered in the second hour as if pulling a single right stitch free from a seam. The app bloomed with boxes from yesterday and the day before, small gray thumbnails stamped with times. She tapped one. Her own front step appeared the fisheye, bending the porch into a bow. There were sounds before any person entered the frame. A bass line, a woman's laugh that cut high and clean, then a voice near the door close enough to fog the microphone. She's finally out. Freedom. Evelyn sat up straighter. She tapped save and felt the phone buzz in her palm. She tapped again in case the first tap had not counted. She leaned close and watched the hand that reached for the knob, the way the knuckles went white, the way the door moved slow as if savoring its own sound. She scrolled. Someone had posted a story of the backyard from 2 houses down, a phone in a hand pointing over a fence. She did not know the girl who filmed it. She could see the grill, the red cups, a string of paper lanterns swaying over the lemon tree. Kelsey faced the camera and lifted her glass like a small queen. Her mouth opened and the music swallowed part of her words, but the caption had done the rest. To freedom. The little strip of video looped and looped. Sophie stood near the fence in one of the loops. Evelyn paused and pinched the screen open. The child's hands were pressed flat to her thighs. Her eyes were not on the cake. They were on the door that led into the house. Nora came in and set a bag of groceries on the counter. The story played again. She looked at the phone, then at Evelyn. I need copies of what I have, Evelyn said. Real paper. Nora drove. The copy shop smelled like toner and hot plastic. A machine spit clean rectangles. Evelyn watched the gray deed turn darker, the seal a little less tired. She made a stack and then another stack. She printed still frames from the ring clip, the one with the hand on the knob, the one with the door in the same position, just more open. She clipped them at the corner with a cheap metal bite. On their way back, they passed her street. Evelyn looked without meaning to. The lemon tree showed itself between houses, a flash of green. The music had stopped. The fence line was quiet and pale. She rubbed her thumb over the line of the clip corner until it bit. Nora parked in her own drive. She came around to Evelyn's side and waited with her hand on the door frame. Her face showed the small lines around the mouth that come from use. I left my machine, Evelyn said. I left other things too. Nora nodded. She kept her voice low. They are not here right now. The truck is gone. Evelyn did not ask how Nora knew. The neighborhood had eyes and ears the way a body has nerves. They walked down the sidewalk with the heat pressing on their shoulders. Evelyn felt each key on the ring like a different tooth. The front door of her house had a deadbolt and a knob. The keys she had were old brass worn to smooth where Danny's hand had loved them. She slid the first one in the knob. It turned. The deadbolt took the second try. The door opened on the smell of marinade sugar beer and a sweetness that did not belong to any real plant. They stood still and listened. No footsteps. A refrigerator motor. Somewhere inside the wall, the air handler spoke and then went quiet. Nora stayed in the entry body angled toward the street. Evelyn moved to the small bedroom first. The singer sat where she had left it still and clean. She unplugged it, wrapped the cord around its base, and felt the old weight in her arms, heavy as sin. Her breath stepped up. She set the machine near the door. She went into the kitchen and opened the freezer. A thin fog rose to meet her. Bags and boxes, food and frost. Her fingers went to the back like a homing bird and found a small accordion file cold as a bone. She pressed it under her arm and shut the door. The little puffs of frozen air made small clouds in the light. She did not let herself look at the drawings on the refrigerator. She had already seen them. In the hallway, a shadow moved across the wall. Nora's head appeared in the doorway. The shadow had been her hand waving. "Quick," Nora said. "A car door." Evelyn gathered the singer. Her shoulder pulled. Something in the old scar in her back woke and yawned but held. They moved as if the floor were trying to hold them down. In the entry, Evelyn's eye snagged on the iron hook. The keys that were not hers hung there on a braided loop, bright and new. She did not reach for them. She did not touch what was not hers. She had what she came for. They stepped out into the heat and crossed the small distance between doors. On Nora's lawn, a sprinkler began to swing. Water hissed against water. A pickup turned onto the street at the far end and crawled toward them like a beetle. Inside Nora's kitchen, the machine sat on the table like a guest. Evelyn opened the cold file with shaking hands. The deed lay inside whole and soft with age. She traced her name on the top line. Danny's signature was there in blue from a year before he died. She let the paper rest flat. Nora poured water and set the glass where Evelyn could find it without looking. She sat across from her and set her elbows on her knees. "They took your things from your drawer," Nora said, not asking. They moved everything Evelyn said. They always did it like it was cleaning. She set the deed beside the photocopies. The clean machine sat under the dim hum of the kitchen light, its paint a deep, patient beige. She put her palm on it and felt less alone than she had felt in days. That evening brought cicadas in the live oak and the low whistle of the 10 o'clock train from the South Line. The house softened at the corners. Evelyn slept on Nora's couch and woke to find a folded throw over her feet. The smell of lemon cleaner had drifted down the hall. Sophie's drawing in her mind would not go away. She saw the stick figure with gray hair holding a lemon the size of her head. She saw the triangle roof. On the second morning, Bill sat in a stack on Nora's table. Nora had pulled them from Evelyn's mailbox. The electric bill had doubled since spring. The water bill showed 3 showers a day and a yard watered at noon. There were receipts for paint and tile from a contractor named Travis. The handwriting on the line for approval was not Evelyn's, though it tried to be. She lined the bills up in rows like pattern pieces and kept her breath slow. She remembered Kelsey's voice in the kitchen, the light tone that never matched the words. "It is fair if we take the master. You only need a bed and a dresser. We put a microwave in the pantry because the old one was embarrassing. If you love Sophie, you would not make this hard." The words sat on the air in Nora's kitchen as if the woman had spoken them there. Evelyn took Nora's phone and opened the message thread she had with Nora's niece, a girl from 2 houses down, who had posted the backyard story. She typed politely. The girl responded with more video without comment. There were 3 clips in the new set. In one, Mark leaned on the grill with a beer and looked past the camera and laughed. In another, Kelsey shouted over the music and raised her glass high. In the third, Sophie watched the back door again. Evelyn saved them all and bought cloud storage when her phone begged for more space. She printed frames again at the copy shop. The clerk watched the printer in a bored way and gave her an extra paper clip. She said thank you and walked home with the stack held against her chest. By noon, the heat made the sidewalk smell like dust and pennies. Nora moved a fan into the kitchen and tilted it just so. It rattled and found a stable hum. Evelyn laid her hand on the front of the singer and then on the deed again. The cold file had already lost its chill. She slid the deed into the tote with the copies and zipped it. She set the tote by the chair. Nora looked at the clock. She looked at Evelyn. "Do you want me to call someone who knows what to do with this?" "Who?" Evelyn said. "A lawyer," Nora said. "A real one. Not a friend who reads things online. My cousin went through something like this. The woman who helped her was named Aisha. She is careful and she is not afraid." Evelyn stared at the small brass key on the locksmith flyer on Nora's refrigerator. The key in the picture was not her key, but it looked like one. She pictured the iron hook by her door. She pictured the way the knob had turned slow on the ring clip. She felt the small indent on the singer's casing where Danny had chipped it by accident. She nodded once. Nora scrolled through her contacts with her thumb. She set the phone on speaker and set it on the table between them like a seed. A soft voice answered on the second ring. Nora said her name and told her what they had. She kept it clean and straight. There was a pause. The voice on the phone asked for the name on the deed. Evelyn said it clearly and again more clearly. The voice asked for the street. Nora gave it. The voice asked if there was a child in the home. Evelyn closed her eyes and saw Sophie's hands pressed flat to her thighs. She said yes. The room listened to its own quiet again, while the voice went away for a moment. Evelyn felt the weight of the keys in her pocket. She set them on the table and spread them out like coins. The singer looked back at her with its simple face. The phone came to life in Nora's hand. Nora put it on speaker again. Aisha Patel can see you in 1 hour, the voice said. Aisha Patel's office sat above a pawn shop on South Flores. The stairwell smelled like old mops and heat. A bell on the glass door rang when they came in. A box fan pushed warm air around a room full of files. A map of Bazar County hung crooked on the far wall. Aisha stood from behind a desk, crowded with binders and a small cactus in a chipped blue pot. I am Aisha, she said. You must be Evelyn. Nora, thank you for calling. Evelyn took the chair that faced the window. The street noise came up in waves. Aisha listened without interrupting. Evelyn told it in pieces. The shove, the bank, the lost papers, the video. She took the accordion file from the tote and laid out what was inside. The deed soft and full of breath. Photographs of the cut behind her ear, the line of dried blood like a string on her neck. Bills stacked like bricks. Copies of the ring frames the hand on the knob, the door moving. Aisha put on thin frame glasses and read with her finger on the page. She did not ask for the same detail twice. When she watched the ring clip, she set the volume low and leaned closer as if the microphone might tell her a secret the first time had not. That voice, Aisha said. Do you know whose it is? Kelsey Evelyn said. Aisha nodded, and there is a child in the home. My granddaughter Evelyn said, Sophie, 9. Aisha took a breath in through her nose and let it out slow. We will keep her safe while we do this. I am going to call the courthouse. If the duty judge is in, I can request an emergency writ of possession and a temporary protective order. The footage of the shove, the cut the loan in your name, and these videos will help. She dialed from a landline and spoke with a firmness that did not need volume. Names, dates, addresses. She said the words home invasion and elder abuse in the flat way that closes a door. She spelled Rousseau and Hart. She said the street twice as if drawing it into the room. While she was on hold, Aisha turned the screen of Evelyn's phone toward herself and captured the ring clip to her server, then the backyard stories, then the still frames. She set the phone on the desk face up, and the room was quiet except for the fan and the low hunger of the pawn shop compressor through the floor. The judge came back with a date and a line of questions. Aisha answered each the way someone who has been here many times answers when they are seen. She wrote on a legal pad in neat boxes, judge time reference number, then tore the page clean and put it in her folder. She made 2 more calls, one to the police substation, one to Child Protective Services. She said there was a minor present and asked for a social worker to attend no accusations, just eyes on the child. She hung up and looked at Evelyn. You will not confront them alone. 2 officers will meet us. CPS will send a worker named Carmen. We will arrive together. The order is signed. Evelyn held the edge of the chair as if it might move. Today, Aisha said. Late afternoon. People are home. Evidence sits where it is. You have the deed in copies. That is good. I want you to bring those and nothing else. The officers will read the order. They will give 30 minutes to take personal items, the rest stays. You do not have to speak to them. Nora shifted a little to take the weight off one hip. I will drive her, she said. Aisha wrote her own number on a card and slid it to Evelyn. Keep this in your pocket with your keys. Evelyn looked down at her hands. They had a seamstress's polish, soft and clean around the nails, a tiny nick below the thumb where a needle had betrayed her months before. She sounded her own voice in her head and found it firm enough to hold a word. I have to bring my keys, she said. Yes, Aisha said, you will want to feel them there. They left the office and the heat wrapped them at once, a blanket too heavy to lift. The pawn shop door shut behind them with a metal rattle. Nora's car baked in the lot. She rolled the windows down and let the trapped air go. They did not speak much on the drive. They passed a church with a sign that announced a fish fry on Friday. They passed a park where 2 boys sat on a bench and did not move. They passed a tire shop where a man with a towel around his neck drank from a hose. They stopped at a small diner near Military Drive. It had a counter and a chalkboard menu and a clouded pie case. They ate chicken soup and saltines, and the taste of it was simple and warm. A television high in a corner showed a silent baseball game. The camera cut to a crowd shot, and a man laughed without sound and lifted a beer. Evelyn folded her napkin into a tight, thin square. Sophie, she said. Aisha's eyes were kind without softness. Carmen will stand with her. If the girl needs to walk away, she will walk with her. They sat a moment longer, then paid and left. Heat rolled up from the parking lot and made the world above it wobble. In Nora's car, the air conditioner worked with all it had brave and small. The lemon tree waited at the edge of Evelyn's mind like a landmark in fog. They parked 3 houses down from Evelyn's. The street looked like it always looked on a summer evening. A woman in a tank top hosed a walkway. A small dog barked at nothing and then at everything. Somewhere a radio played a song that could have been 10 years old, or one it was hard to tell. On Evelyn's block, nothing moved. At 5:58, the first patrol car turned the corner and stopped in front of her house. The lights were not on. The engine ticked as it cooled. 2 officers stepped out, a tall man with shoulders like a coat rack, and a younger woman with her hair braided tight. The man introduced himself as Sergeant Delgado. The woman said Officer Pierce and shook Evelyn's hand with a grip that fit. "You are the homeowner," Delgado said. "Yes," Evelyn said. "My name is on the deed." Aisha arrived with a messenger bag and a stack of papers clipped and tabbed. She greeted the officers by name. She handed Delgado the order and watched him read it all the way through. A white van pulled up behind them. A woman in a plain blouse got out with a folder pressed under her arm. "Carmen Ramirez," she said, "CPS." They stood in a small circle in the last light of the day and reviewed what each of them would do. Aisha spoke plainly and let the officers lead. Delgado nodded and folded the order back on itself and put it in a plastic sleeve. He looked at the house, then at the people around him, then at Evelyn. "You stand with your lawyer," he said. "We knock. We ask them to step out. If they do not, we can enter." Evelyn could smell the sharp green of the lemon leaves. She could smell the faint sweetness of Kelsey's candles under the smell of meat grease that drifted even through a closed door. The sky had gone the color of a bruise. Streetlights woke one by one in small pops she felt as much as heard. They went up the short path together. The doormat said home in letters that wanted to be friendly. There was a small pile of shoes against the wall, men's and women's, all new. Delgado lifted a heavy hand and knocked 3 times. The sound traveled inside the house in a slow, respectful way as if it knew the frame. No one answered. He knocked again. His knuckles made a harder sound. Officer Pierce said, "Normal voice, please. Open the door." Something brushed the other side. A pause. The knob did not turn. Evelyn could see the circle of the doorbell camera like an eye. She thought of the clip, the hand on the knob. She could hear a television now faint through the wood. A laugh track rose and fell timed so perfectly it could not be real. Delgado looked at Aisha. Aisha kept her face still. He knocked a 3rd time. "Police," he said. "Court order." The locks turned. There was a scrape she felt in her teeth. The latch lifted slow as if the person on the other side could not decide how much to let it move. The door opened a hand's width, then more. Air from inside reached them rich and heavy. The lemon tree's leaves trembled at a breeze that did not reach the porch. Mark stood in the gap with a can of beer shirt untucked face red over his nose. His eyes skipped past Delgado and Pierce and landed on Aisha's stack of papers. He blinked once like a man who has misread a sign and wants to pretend he did not. Then he saw Evelyn small behind them and his mouth changed shape. "What did you do?" he said. Delgado did not step back. He let the door open fully, his hand steady on the edge to keep it from closing again. Officer Pierce stood a pace behind him with one palm low and open a posture that left nothing to argue. "We have a court order," Delgado said. His voice was deep and even. Mr. Russo stepped to the porch. Mark glanced over his shoulder as if he expected a script to appear on the wall. He took a slow step out. The beer can hissed when he squeezed it. His gaze slid past the uniforms to Aisha, found the thick stack of paper, and flinched. Kelsey came into view from the hallway with a hand on her hair as if for a camera. The scent of her candle moved with her sticky and false. She saw the badges. Her lips stretched and lost their shape. "What is this?" she said. "You cannot just show up." Aisha held out the sleeved order so Delgado could speak from it. He did not raise the paper like a shield. He read as if he were reading the weather. "Emergency writ of possession. Temporary protective order. Property at this address is registered in the name of Evelyn Russo." He turned one page. "Order is effective now." Kelsey laughed once the sound high and dry. "We live here. That is our couch. That is our room. You cannot evict family." Aisha did not look at Kelsey. She looked at Delgado. "There is evidence of physical harm," she said, "and a loan signed with her name without consent. There is video. There is a minor in the home the court saw enough today to act. Kelsey's eyes cut to Evelyn as if Evelyn had spilled something valuable. "You are really doing this to your own son," she said. "You are embarrassing yourself in front of the neighbors." Delgado held up a hand before Evelyn could answer. "Ma'am, this is not a negotiation. You will have 30 minutes to gather essential personal items. Clothing, medications, identification. Furniture and fixtures stay. Items that belong to the owner stay. You will arrange a later time to collect the rest." Mark's face emptied. He looked younger than he had looked that morning, then older than he had looked 5 minutes ago. He shook his head once hard. "No, this is a mistake." Officer Pierce spoke for the first time. "The more you cooperate, the smoother this goes. If you do not, we can remove you. That is not what I want to do." A sound rose behind them, the soft rumble of a small crowd growing. Curtains shifted across the street. The woman with the hose shut it off and stood in her yard with her hands hanging at her sides. A small dog fell silent. In Nora's window, a checked curtain lifted and settled. Kelsey's jaw worked. She pulled herself taller and turned toward the living room. "Fine. We will get what we need. Sophie, get your shoes." The child stepped into the doorway like a shadow given weight. Her eyes were swollen. She saw Evelyn and stopped. The air changed. Carmen moved one step forward and held her hands loose. "Hi, Sophie," Carmen said, gentle but clear. "I'm here to make sure you are okay. Your parents need to pack a few things. You can stand with me if you like." Sophie did not answer. She took 2 quick steps past Carmen and went to Evelyn as if pulled by a rope. Her arms wrapped around Evelyn's waist. She did not cry now. The dry sound had been spent earlier. She pressed her face into the cotton of Evelyn's blouse and breathed in like she had been underwater. Evelyn put a hand on the back of the child's head and felt the clean part in her hair with 2 fingers. "You are safe," she said, quiet. "You did nothing wrong." Kelsey's mouth opened to speak and closed again when she met Carmen's eyes. Carmen nodded toward the hallway. "Let them pack, please. I will bring Sophie to sit by me on the porch." Delgado watched the exchange and said to Mark, 30 minutes begins now." He checked the time on his watch and said it out loud. 6:14. Inside drawers opened and shut in hard motions. Hangers scraped. The sounds of packing filled the house in a flat way, all noise, no music. Kelsey announced items to herself as if naming them made them hers. Toothbrush, charger, birth certificate. She pulled her hand back with a small cry when a drawer pinched her. She shook her fingers and glared at the wood. Mark moved like a man who does not know what matters. He shoved shirts into a bag and kicked the bag when it would not close. He scooped a handful of small plastic horses from Sophie's floor and dropped them in with his shoes. He paused at the refrigerator and stared at the drawings as if they were written in a language he could once read. He peeled one off and folded it and stuffed it into his pocket. A neighbor coughed to cover the noise of watching. Another neighbor whispered a name that sounded like a prayer. Nora stood to the side with her arms folded across her middle, quiet as a fence post. Her eyes found Evelyn and stayed there steady. Kelsey appeared again, a tote digging at her shoulder. She looked at Evelyn with a smile that showed too many teeth. "We improved this place," she said. "You are welcome." She turned to Aisha and jabbed a finger in the direction of the kitchen. "We put in a new microwave. We painted. Do we get compensated for that?" Aisha did not answer. Delgado did. "Take your clothes," he said. "Leave the rest." Mark came down the hall with a shoebox and a plastic bag of toiletries. He stopped in front of Evelyn without meaning to and stood there the way a person stands when they have walked into a room and forgotten why. He looked at her mouth, not her eyes, and spoke in a voice that did not reach the porch rail. "You are not thinking straight," he said. Evelyn did not lean toward him. She did not lean away. "I am thinking," she said. His nostrils flared. He took a step as if to pass her, then stopped again. In his stopping, he bumped the small potted lemon under the front window that Evelyn had started from a seed, a pale green sprout in a clay cup. The thin stem bent. The top leaf brushed the brick. He did not look down. He moved on. Carmen sat with Sophie on the edge of the porch. The child held a small stuffed turtle in her lap and picked at a loose thread with the care of a surgeon. She did not look at her father when he went by. She looked at the yard. A monarch cut a lazy line over the lemon tree, then rose to catch a warmer current. The air smelled like dust and old smoke and the sweet slice of the tree's leaves. "Time," Delgado said, looking at his watch. 5 minutes. Kelsey appeared with a final armful breath high in her chest. She stopped on the threshold and faced Evelyn as if the air could be shaped to carry her words further. "You will regret this," she said. The tone was almost pleasant. Aisha turned toward her so the phone in her hand caught the sound well. "Threats are being documented," she said to the air. Kelsey scoffed and looked for an audience that had already left. The woman with the hose had gone back inside. The man across the street had nothing left to do to his mailbox. A boy on a bike rolled slow, then faster. Delgado nodded once. "That is time. If you have more to collect, you can coordinate with your counsel and arrange a supervised retrieval." He stepped back to make room, but did not leave the doorway. Mark carried the bags to the curb. The truck door chirped and opened its mouth. He shoved the first bag in and threw the second. It bounced and spilled. A row of rolled socks spilled to the gutter and ran away like a soft parade. He kicked one and missed. He kneeled and gathered them, his hands moving in short, sharp grabs. Kelsey climbed in and slammed her door. She remembered something and climbed out again and ran back up the walk, past Delgado's outstretched palm, and snatched a cheap glass candle from the front table. The candle's label said "Island Breeze" in a font with palm trees. The wax had hardened into waves. She stuffed it into a tote already full of things that did not matter. Sophie stood with Carmen. She watched her parents and grew very still. She turned her face up to Evelyn. The child spoke in a voice the porch deserved. "Where am I going tonight?" she said. Carmen answered before anyone else could. "You are going home with your parents for now," she said. Her voice carried steady and kind. "I will be checking on you. Your grandmother and I will talk again soon. You will be okay." Sophie nodded. She looked at Evelyn again and bit her lower lip. "Can I come water the lemon tree?" she said. Evelyn's throat tightened at the exact same moment the small clay pot inside bent again where Mark had nudged it. "Yes," she said. "Any time." Carmen stood with Sophie while the child hugged her grandmother again. The girl's fingers held the back of Evelyn's blouse in a pinch that hurt just enough to feel real. Carmen touched Sophie's shoulder, then let her go at the right second with the right pressure. Delgado walked with Mark to the truck. He spoke without menace and without softness. Mark nodded and nodded again as if that were all he knew how to do. Kelsey kept her eyes on her phone screen and scrolled with her jaw set. She did not look up when she tapped the camera and saw only herself. The truck's engine turned and held. The headlights glared against the white of the porch rail. Officer Pierce took a photograph of the front of the house for the record and saved it to the case file. The truck pulled away slow at first, then faster. Its taillights dwindled past the corner and were gone. Silence did not fall. It opened. The street breathed. The dog barked at a breeze and wagged its tail. The radio down the block found a song from a decade ago and sang it like new. Someone whistled twice badly. Delgado faced Evelyn with a set of keys in his hand. They were hers. He had taken them from her to unlock the deadbolt after Mark had stepped out, and before the packing had truly begun, a small thing easy to forget. He placed them back in her palm. "Change the locks," he said. "Tonight if you can, tomorrow if you cannot. If anyone returns without permission, call." Aisha added a folded paper to his advice. "This is a copy of the order. Keep it in your bag." Carmen touched Evelyn's elbow gently. "I will check in about Sophie," she said. "You did the right thing for yourself. You made the house safe." Evelyn did not answer. She was looking at the iron hook by the door. It had held too many keys earlier. Now it held none. She hung her ring there, and the metal clicked a sound like a word she had not heard in a long time. Delgado and Pierce walked the rooms a quick sweep to ensure no one remained. They opened a closet and closed it. They lifted a shower curtain and let it drop. They looked at windows and found them intact. Pierce returned and nodded. Delgado tipped his chin. "Secure," he said. They left with Carmen and Aisha. The patrol car idled long enough to write a number on a small card. Delgado handed it to Evelyn. "Call if there is any problem." He glanced at Nora, took in the way she stood, and added, "Keep an eye out." "I always do," Nora said. The engines faded. The street returned to itself. The smell of cheap candle wax was already loosening its hold inside the front room. Evelyn stepped over the threshold and stood still. The living room wore the party like a coat thrown on the wrong chair. Red cups slumped on their sides. A paper plate with a triangle of cake sagged into itself. A string of lanterns hung where no string had ever hung, their bulbs dark. Her deep chair hunched in the corner where Kelsey had pushed it. The spot by the window where it belonged was pale where sun had not reached in months. Evelyn crossed the room and put her hands on the arms of the chair. The fabric gave under her palms. She dragged it inch by inch, the legs making a sound that was not kind, and set it where the light would find it in the morning. She stood behind it and waited for her breath to settle. The room changed shape. She moved to the stereo and pressed the power button. It clicked, then gave a small sigh as it died. The quiet that followed was not empty. It had weight. She gathered cups and plates and stacked them without looking at the faces on them. She scraped the frosting into the trash and felt the sugar cling and let go. She wiped crumbs from the table, the cheap wood grain catching them like a fabric pulls lint. She lifted the glossy bedspread from the master and carried it to the hall to fold later for return. On the dresser, Kelsey's glass dish of rings still lay rings that were not family rings, just bright circles. Evelyn put them into a gallon bag and sealed it the plastic, closing with a sound that made sense. She went to the small room and picked up the pillow she had sewn from Danny's old work shirt, the collar still bearing a stain that had never come out. She smoothed it. She put it under her arm and carried it to the master. She set it on the bed and stood with her hands at her sides. In the kitchen, she turned on the tap until the water ran cold and let the glasses rinse themselves clean under the stream. She dried one with a towel that had been pushed to the back of a drawer. Her hands knew that towel. The embroidery on the corner had been a weekend project 15 years ago. The thread was a lemon yellow that matched the tree outside in spring. She opened the freezer and looked into the white, cold, and smiled despite herself. The back corner was empty now. The little accordion file had come out that afternoon, but a shape in the frost showed where it had been. She closed the freezer and opened a cabinet. The old coffee can with coins still sat behind a stack of bowls. She took it down and shook it. The coins whispered against each other. She went to the entry and took the locksmith flyer from Nora's hand. Nora had followed her inside and stood rubbing her arms like she wanted to be useful and could not find what to carry. Evelyn handed her the bag of rings and the glossy bedspread. "For return," she said. Nora nodded. "I will keep them safe until someone asks the right way." They stood a moment in the doorway and looked out at the lemon tree. A small branch near the bottom had a fresh bend in it. Evelyn went to it and pinched the leaf at the end of the bend between her thumb and forefinger. The leaf was bruised, but still green. She straightened the branch and propped it gently with a chopstick she found in the junk drawer and a soft tie from the bag where twist ties go to wait. "Stubborn," Nora said. "She grew in the spot with rock under her," Evelyn said. "She remembers." They walked back into the cool of the house. The day had turned to evening in the small automatic ways days do. The light through the window carried dust and made it pretty. Evelyn fetched a pillowcase from the linen closet and shook it out. She slid it over the foam cushion of her chair and smoothed it with the side of her hand. She put her keys on the table by the door and felt the weight leave her pocket and settle into the wood. She found the bathroom and ran the water hot until steam fogged the mirror. She sat on the tub edge and touched the cut behind her ear with the tip of a towel. It had sealed. The thin line would stay a while, a new thread laid among old ones. She washed her face and watched her mouth in the mirror hold steady. She turned off the tap and the pipes made a small hollow knock that sounded like a shared joke from another house. In the bedroom, she opened the small box that held the little things that mattered too much to leave out. Danny's watch with the cracked face. The stub of a pencil from when Mark had been small and had asked her to draw a lemon, with a smile like the one on the refrigerator earlier. She placed the watch on the dresser and the pencil beside it. The air in the room warmed a degree. The house held its breath and then let it go. From outside, the cicadas started up in the live oak as if they had been given a signal. A train on the South Line spoke once and was gone. Somewhere in the neighborhood a man laughed, and the laugh stayed pleasant when it faded. Evelyn went to the door and put her hand on the deadbolt. It turned with a clean click. She heard it in her bones. She stood with her hand there for a second longer, then let it fall. She looked at the iron hook and the keys that hung there. She stood still and listened until she could hear the house itself. Then she closed her eyes and opened them again and went to put water on for tea. 2 weeks later, the courthouse air carried the smell of old paper and lemon cleaner. The hallway hum built and faded as doors opened and closed. Aisha set a folder on the table and nodded at Evelyn. Across the aisle, Mark and Kelsey sat with a man in a suit that bunched at the shoulders. Kelsey kept her phone face down. Mark studied the wood grain on the bench as if it might move. Judge Whitaker read with clean attention. She tapped the ring transcript with a pen, then looked at the still frames, the hand on the knob, the door moving. She glanced at the photographs of the cut behind Evelyn's ear, the dark line like a thread. She read the loan forms twice. When the contractor bills came up, the judge held them to the light. The signatures tried to be Evelyn's and were not. Aisha spoke only when asked. She kept dates and names precise. The room was spare the way a sewing table is spare before a job begins. The judge stacked the papers, squared the corners, and set them down. Right of possession is granted in full. Temporary order is made permanent. Further investigation on the loan is referred. Parties are instructed to avoid contact outside counsel. The gavel did not crack like in a movie. It met the block with a neat sound. Kelsey's lawyer put his hands on his knees. Kelsey stared at the table. Mark lifted his gaze for the first time and found his mother. He did not hold it. He dropped it like something hot. Outside the courthouse, cars pushed heat into the afternoon. Aisha handed Evelyn certified copies in a manila envelope. "Keep one at home. Keep one in your bag." Her voice was steady and kind. "Call if anything changes." "I will," Evelyn said. Back on South Side, a locksmith truck pulled up to the curb and coughed into silence. The man in a canvas cap had forearms like table legs and the neat hands of someone who works in small spaces. He laid his case open on the porch and chose new hardware that caught the light. He worked without talk. Metal rang in the door like a bell from another country. Shavings curled bright as the sun. When he was done, he stepped back to let Evelyn turn the key herself. The new lock turned and clicked. The sound carried through her palm to her elbow, a clean little knock that made something inside her settle. She paid in cash from the coffee can and tucked the receipt under a magnet shaped like a chili pepper. The house took its shape around her again. The deep chair by the window found the morning light. The singer sat with the lamp on low, a pool of amber on metal. The lemon tree outside pushed new leaves from tips that had looked dead at the start of summer. In the quiet, the machine's motor purred when she pressed the pedal. Her foot remembered the exact weight. The needle rose and fell. A seam closed and lay flat under her hand. The work was ordinary and it was enough. Days began to hang on simple hooks. Water on in the kettle. Thread passed through the eye in one clean motion. A sweep of the porch. Bills on the table, the numbers no longer swollen. Nora came most afternoons with a covered plate and neighborhood talk. They sat with their glasses sweating rings on the wood and listened to cicadas drill at the edges of the light. Sometimes they did not speak at all. A week after the hearing, the phone rang at 10 in the morning. Carmen's voice came through with the soft authority of someone who knows what is at stake. "I have completed my visit," she said. "Sophie has asked to spend time with you for a while. We will need to walk through the house, check sleeping arrangements, food medication. Are you open to that?" "Yes," Evelyn said. Carmen arrived with a clipboard and kind eyes. She checked the fridge and the smoke alarms and the medicine cabinet. She looked at the room with the yellow quilt and the shelf with children's books that did not try too hard. She made notes and asked questions without edges. She looked at the lemon tree and smiled with her whole face. 2 weeks later, a white sedan eased to the curb. Sophie stepped out with a backpack that sagged at the zippers. She looked very small on the sidewalk. Carmen opened the passenger door and set a hand on the bag. She spoke to the child and then to Evelyn, words simple and exact. Papers were signed. The sedan pulled away. Sophie walked to the porch with her chin up and her mouth set like she wanted to be brave and did not know the shape. She stopped and looked at Evelyn, then at the doorway, then back again. "Can I pick my room?" she said. "You can," Evelyn said. "The one with the window to the tree is ready." Sophie stepped inside. The floor creaked. The house seemed to lean in. Evelyn showed her the drawer with the hair ties that never held, and the shelf where crayons lived in a jar. She pointed at the narrow desk and the lamp with the pull chain. Sophie reached up and pulled the chain 3 times in a row. The light obeyed every time. She smiled without trying. That evening they cooked together. Sophie rinsed cilantro in the sink while Evelyn chopped onions. The smell opened the air in the little kitchen. The girl cried at the second cut and laughed at herself and wiped her eyes on a paper towel. The two of them ate at the table with the window open. The radio from 2 houses over played a song in Spanish and the words rose and fell like water. At bedtime, Sophie stood in the hallway with the turtle pressed to her chest. "Can I leave the nightlight on?" she said. "Leave it on," Evelyn said. "Close the door as much as you want." Sophie left a slice of space. The hall sent in a thin line of light. Evelyn listened to the little breaths from the other room and sat at the singer with the lamp warm on her hands. She guided fabric under the needle and watched the seam appear 2 raw edges married into one. At the H-E-B on a Saturday morning, Evelyn turned from the produce and saw Mark at the bakery case. He held a paper slip between 2 fingers and waited for his number to be called. The fluorescent light made a hard line on his face. His shirt needed an iron. His shoes were tired. He glanced up. For a second he looked like the boy who had asked for a lemon with a smile. He was not that boy. His eyes moved to the floor and stayed there. His number was called. He took a bag of tortillas and left without looking back. Evelyn stood in front of the oranges and smelled their oil bright and clean. She added 2 to her cart and pushed it toward the milk. Summer thinned. The air took on a different weight. Sophie came home from school with a paper that said she had read 3 books in a week. She taped it to the fridge herself. She watered the lemon tree with a blue can and told it what she had read. The tree accepted the news with a soft shine. One morning, Evelyn stepped onto the back step with a cup of coffee and found the monarch again. It sat on a leaf near the bend that had once broken. Its wings closed and opened a slow bellows of color. She stood still so she would not disturb the air. The butterfly lifted, circled the tree twice, and rose toward the bright that sat just above the roof lines. Sophie came out in bare feet and stood beside her, quiet as a thought. "Look," the child said. "I see," Evelyn said. They watched until the orange and black was only a guess against the sky. The coffee cooled in her hand. The lemon leaf under the place where the butterfly had been held the shape of the visit for 1 second more, then let it go. Inside, the keys waited on the iron hook by the door. The ring was heavier than it looked. Evelyn took it down and weighed it in her palm. She set it back and went to the machine. The singer's light came on at a touch. The motor answered her foot. The needle rose and fell. The line it made was straight and clean. The house seemed to listen. Outside, the lemon tree caught the first good light, and the new leaves shone the soft green of a promise already kept. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story. I'll see you next time as we continue exploring more journeys and lessons together.